Ben, I know you get a ton of questions, email, phone, about how did you start Guardian? How do you do this? So can you tell us a little bit about when Guardian started and what motivated you to get it started?
Yeah, so Guardian started, at least in my mind, many years ago. I guess it's 5 or 6 years ago now. The reason was I was doing the Big Brothers Big Sisters program at the time, and I realized that it was hard to volunteer and hard to give up big chunks of time. And I always thought, wouldn't it be cool if you were able to mentor kids by doing something that you already were passionate about in your own life? And for me, that was always jiu-jitsu, and I always thought it'd be cool if my little brother was into jiu-jitsu. Right around the same time, I had a couple of friends who were pretty middle class, and I asked them when they were going to get their 2 twin 5-year-old daughters into jiu-jitsu, and they told me they couldn't afford it. And the reason they couldn't was that they already paid for swimming, they already paid for soccer, they already paid for dance. And it really hit me that this wasn't just a problem that people on the very low end of the financial spectrum were having, but it was also a problem that even middle-class families, a lot of them were not able to afford that incremental cost of putting their kids into a sport like boxing or jiu-jitsu after school. And a few years probably after I started just kicking the idea around in my head, I was working at Twitter at the time, and one of the guys there named Joel Lunenfeld, who was the head of brand strategy for the company, found out on a trip to CES that he really loved boxing, and he found out I loved jiu-jitsu. We kind of talked about the idea together about doing something for doing an after-school program for kids, and that was really where the idea, or where I should say it transformed into more than an idea, and where we actually decided to move forward, create an organization that we could actually start doing this and helping people out with.
And then I'm sure plenty of people ask you, what is the difference with starting a nonprofit gym and a for-profit gym? And if you had it to do over again, would you do it the same way?
Yeah, so this is probably one of the most important questions we get asked all the time, which is, either I have a gym already, how do I turn it into a nonprofit somehow, or I want to start something from scratch. I think the first thing that I want to be really clear about is we had zero, not 1 second of experience running a nonprofit or running a gym. So both of those sides were really completely new to us. Joel actually took out the original paperwork, and which was an LLC. And so a lot of people don't understand when you open up a nonprofit or you want to open a nonprofit, you first actually have to open more of a traditional business and get an EIN number. Usually that's an LLC or an INC. After that, then you apply for your nonprofit status. So we did that. We kind of did it a little bit on our own to start before we realized, wow, this is a lot of paperwork. It's difficult to do, and if we submit it wrong, we're just going to be behind the 8 ball of playing catch up. So we actually then enlisted a lawyer and an accountant to help us with that paperwork. I know in a lot of states, like in Maryland right now, where we're opening up Guardian Baltimore, there's actually kind of full service options for this, where you can go to a group, pay them a flat rate, and they'll essentially take all of your information, they'll download it out of your brain of what you want to do, and then they'll create the paperwork in order to file it. And that's definitely much more recommended because these folks are experts at doing this. They know how to get that through, they know where the pitfalls are going to be, and it's just a very cumbersome and difficult process to do on your own to actually be a nonprofit. And I think there's a few different ways you can really skin the cat here, right? I mean, you can be a gym that's a regular for-profit gym and just have a scholarship program and allow kids to train for free. You can be a nonprofit gym like we are. You could be some sort of a hybrid model and have both. You could have a nonprofit and a for-profit. So there's just a lot of things to consider there, but I think regardless of how people shake it out, our goal is to have more gyms and more places in the world offering kids the opportunity to train martial arts at either an affordable or even better yet, a free cost for them.
And so for the person who might be concerned that it takes millions of dollars to be that person who gets to found your own gym, and you'd have to quit your job and everything else, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, it could. It depends. I mean, we live in the most expensive area in the world, pretty much, the San Francisco Bay Area. So the cost of hiring people is more expensive than almost anywhere. The cost of rent is certainly almost as expensive as anywhere in the world. So it takes more to start an organization like Guardian in the Bay Area than it probably does in 99.9% of places. I was not a millionaire when I started Guardian. I was really fortunate to meet Joel, and Joel and I both put money in at the beginning. He put a substantial amount more than me, right around $100,000 or $110,000 of his own money. That essentially became sort of the working capital to start the business. Some of that went to a prepayment of our original lease. We did a branding and logo exercise. We had to buy some original equipment, and then where a lot of that money went was to funding the beginning months of actually opening the gym when it was time, and paying for instructors, knowing that we weren't going to have any grants coming in at the beginning, we weren't going to have a lot of private donations, and we certainly weren't going to have any adult members on the first day that we opened our doors. So, essentially what it did was create a runway for us to work our way up and start to get those revenue sources in place. And I think a lot of folks probably can estimate some of those bigger costs, but I'd also say there's a lot of smaller costs when operating a gym too. You have your insurance premiums, which typically need to be paid up front for the first year in full. You have, of course, cleaning supplies and bags. You have to pay for internet. You might need a software system to, like a MindBody or a Zen Planner or something to actually keep track of your students. So there's all those little things that really add up. And one of the things I've found is that if you know some of the things you need, like a dehumidifier or a fan or cleaning supplies, sometimes it's easy to get those things donated, but if you wait till the last minute, you're almost always going to have to buy them, and it's going to be very difficult to get kind of last minute donations for items that you need.
All right, and then so roughly how much did it cost to start Guardian, and how much on a monthly basis does it cost?
Yeah, so that $110, let's call it $1,000 that came in at the beginning, that was really like the only, if you will, loan that came into the business, even though that was a donation from Joel. We never kind of went back to the well and had to borrow money or anything like that. So I guess you could say that's how much it cost for us to start the organization and feel comfortable that we had a runway to get going. Over time, we slowly started building up our adult membership component to our business. And to be clear, what we do is we allow adults to choose their own membership at Guardian. So we have suggested donation levels, but we have really kind of affordable and the lower end levels where folks can come in, because we want to not only be a gym for just the kids to train for free, but we want to be a gym for the whole community to be able to train in an affordable way.
How does Guardian work from a financial perspective?
So the way that it works is that we have really kind of two different parts to our program. We have a free kids program, and then we have a paying adults portion of our program. And for the adults, we give them suggested membership levels that they can choose from. So we have kind of a standard membership, and then we have two discounted memberships. Those memberships are tied to either at the lowest level, just being for themselves, or as you go up in levels, actually supporting kids along with your membership. It's really important to us that we are a gym not only for the kids to be able to train for free, but also for the adults to be able to train at an affordable level. There's not a lot of nonprofits out there that really support 25 and 30 and 42-year-old adults. So to be able to give people a place where they can actually afford, a place where they can have a positive community when things aren't going well in their life is really important. Also, it's really important to provide the kids a bridge between being kids and then eventually becoming adults. And we now see this with so many of our kids who started with us 2 and 3 years ago, where they're actually transitioning from starting in the kids program to now training in the adults classes. And so unlike a lot of programs that cut someone off when they graduate high school, let's say, or drop out of school, we actually allow them to keep training and start going right into the adults classes. So whether they're looking for a job, whether they have a job, whether they're going to a local community college, whatever it is, they never get kicked out of our program. And we think that bridging that gap is so crucial to success, because that's a really formative time period for a young adult.
You just have the experience now of a few years under your belt. I'm sure there's plenty of things you've learned along the way, plenty of mistakes other people can learn from. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we've made a ton of mistakes, for sure. I think the first one was that we didn't do enough leading up to opening to create awareness of who we were and the demand for folks. So meaning, when we opened the doors, that first 6 or 8 month period of being open was really slow. We weren't doing a lot of Facebook advertising, we weren't doing Instagram advertising, we weren't doing a great job on YouTube of promoting ourselves. And if I could do it all over again, we'd put a lot more effort into doing that on the front end, because I don't think we would have needed that 6 or 8 or 12 month period to really get the gym going. We could have got it going a little bit faster, and that would have been really helpful, obviously, because you're burning a lot of money at the beginning and spending a lot of time by not having the gym as full as it could be.
Okay. So if there's somebody out there who says, hey, I love what Guardian's doing. I think there should be one in my city or in my state. What would you say they need to do in order to either start their own Guardian gym or get started with a gym of their own?
Yeah, so I mean, I think just the big goal, to be clear and back up a step, is that we are a community locally in Oakland, and hopefully we are in some ways pioneers of a larger movement that is not only in the United States, but around the world, which is people who are passionate about these sports. They're able to open their own gym, and they're able to provide this for their own local community. We don't necessarily have ambitions that every city has a Guardian. We're not trying to spread ourselves too thin or anything. We just want to provide everyone the inspiration. We want to provide any sort of tools that we can and knowledge sharing in order for people to do this in their own city. And again, this could be someone who has a gym already and wants to kind of add this component, or this could be someone starting from scratch. I really believe that the future of a lot of gyms is going to be people like myself and like Joel and like Sasha, who they don't necessarily have a world championship under their belt in jiu-jitsu. They're not a professional boxer. They're just someone who has the passion and wants to do this, right? And a lot of times those people, I think, become better managers, better marketers. They can concentrate on the stuff they're good at, and they can hire the best instructors who oftentimes aren't good at those other things, and they can concentrate on just being the best instructors at the gym. And I think in a lot of cases you're going to see this sort of general model continue to proliferate because it works really well. So we are opening another location in Baltimore. It's going to be run by a team there on the ground, and this is really our first experiment of going outside of the Bay Area. And maybe in a year or two we'll have this conversation again, and we'll have a more turnkey approach for people to start Guardians in their own local area. But I think we need to kind of see how that goes, how that model shakes out, see how much success we have there before we expand too quickly, right? I'd rather do a few cities, even just one city, really well, rather than trying to conquer the whole world. Because I do think it's about that local community for each school. It's about having the relationships with the city or the town that it's in. It's about having a way to get kids there after school. It's about being able to fundraise and make all the operations work. There's just a lot of components that you can't really manage from a distance.
All right, and then just to close, what's one piece of advice you wish you would have received before you started Guardian?
Well, I mean, I said it earlier. I should have done more on the planning on the front end. I owe, I think, a lot of credit to Joel for doing a lot of the branding and some of the marketing stuff and really pushing hard for that. I think that there's some things that are worth investing the time and the money in up front to do right, so you're not constantly disappointed for years to come or going back and redoing them and trying to change it. I think we got really good logos from the beginning. I think we did a good job of doing some of the stuff on the marketing side that we just don't have to really worry about anymore, which is great. So that was definitely a good piece of advice that I actually did get. I think in terms of culture, and the reason I left Twitter to focus full-time on Guardian was that building the culture of your gym is so important. And it's really a fine balance between giving the members and the instructors at your gym the autonomy to be their own people and bring their own skill sets, bring their own personalities into the mix while maintaining a really positive culture for the group. And that's the thing I think most companies are now realizing, that culture is what drives their entire business. It's what increases the tenure of their employees, and it's the same with the gym, right? It's, whether you're working at Google or Facebook, or whether you're working at a small gym with a couple employees, it's the same concept, right? That culture is just key to everything. It's what drives all the positivity in the space. So I think putting a really heavy emphasis on that and not worrying about, like, do I have the very best teacher who has the most medals or the most boxing wins or the most kickboxing accomplishments. It's about finding people that are the right fit, because most of your students who come in are not going to be at that level anyway. So you don't need necessarily Mike Tyson to teach boxing, right? You don't need the Mendez brothers teaching jiu-jitsu. You need someone who students can connect with and who they feel like they can be someone that they look up to, someone that's a leader for them, and that's especially true in the kids program, right? That personality becomes really, really important. And just having a good person there leading that program is probably the most important thing that can happen.